All right, Dr. Ron, you saw these tapes. What's your analysis?
Well, this going to be problems for the prosecutor in this case in some areas, and in other areas not. So what we have is we have Mr. Floyd, who is under the influence of drugs and definitely appears to be experiencing what we refer to as a psychomedical emergency known as an agitated chaotic event, or ACE, and that's definitely drug induced. Officers are trained to look at four criteria or four cues when they're doing an evaluation or an assessment. Number one, verbal. Does he say anything? And if he does say something, what does he say and how does he say it? Number two, physically. How does he physically appear? Number three, behavioral. What is his behavior like? And number four, are there any psychological presentations? When you break this entire thing down and open up this package, you see that a man is under the influence of drugs. He's paranoid. He doesn't want to get in the police car. As a matter of fact, from the beginning of the encounter with the police, and don't forget, he's a suspect in a crime, although a lower level crime. I believe it was fraudulently trying to pass a fraudulent $20 bill. So it's a low rate crime. But from the moment that the officers make contact with him, he's resistant. He's non compliant. He won't put his hands on the steering wheel. And so officers have to judge what behavior on the part of the individual increases or decreases their suspicions with regards to officer safety or what could be going on. He's removed from the car forcibly, although not that forcibly, and he's handcuffed and searched, which is totally appropriate because they have both reasonable suspicion and, more likely than not, probable cause to effect an arrest. Then they bring him over to the patrol car, and all they want to do is get him into the patrol car, but yet he's resistant again. And he claims he's claustrophobic, but again, the officers have to reconcile that behavior and the verbal. So they just pulled him out of a car, which was his own car. So wasn't he claustrophobic in that car? So all of a sudden now he's claustrophobic in the patrol car. Once he's in the car, he says he can't breathe, but the officers are not placing any restraints on him whatsoever that would affect his chest, that would affect his throat, his head, his breathing apparatus. And what I found interesting, and this was a change from what we were led to believe, we were led to believe that the police pulled him out of the car and threw him on the ground. That's not what happens at all when we see these tapes. It's actually Mr. Floyd that requests to be placed on the ground. And so the officers put him on the ground. He's not placed on the ground harshly, but then it starts going sideways for the officers because now we have the officer placing his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck, on the side of his neck, for an extended period of time. Another officer says to him during this restraint, and there's three officers that are there. He says to him during the restraint, hey, I think we need to take this guy and put him on his side. We might be getting some excited delirium here. Well, we can't prove excited delirium at all, but we definitely have, for a police officer, it would have been reasonable to believe, again, agitated, chaotic event. Yeah, we better take this guy and we better put him on his side. There's no reason whatsoever for the officer to put his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck. Now, when I look at the tapes, I don't see any other pressure on the back. I see no pressure on the back. I see some pressure on the buttocks that doesn't really affect the breathing apparatus. And I have another officer that's holding on to his feet. And then what happens is that he does experience some breathing problems, but I see no evidence of what we call agonal breathing, but he's definitely experiencing some type of respiratory distress or a heart problem at that point. Then we see him lose consciousness. And a real problem for this officer, Liz, is that he keeps his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck for something like 2 minutes and 53 seconds after you can see he's unconscious.